Give it a few seconds. Okay, we should be good to go.
All right, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Hatem, Jazakallah khairan for joining us today. So just some context for viewers. We're doing a follow-up to the Zakat Workshop that we held last Saturday with Sabeel. There was a lot of questions that came up after that or during that session. So what we've done is we've actually compiled the questions, summarized them, and we've grouped them into different categories. So Dr. Hatem, Jazakallah khairan, really appreciate you taking the time out to be with us today. So we'll go through category by category, inshallah, and I'll read through the questions, and inshallah, if you can help with some context, and we can go from there. So the first question is, or the first category is on zakat responsibility. And the first question is there any difference between a male and a female in terms of rulings and obligations of zakat? And I guess like as a follow-up to that, for more context, if the wife is not working, is the husband responsible to pay zakat for her?
To proceed, there are no differences between males and females in terms of zakat rulings, except when it comes to the recipient, I guess, the deserving recipients. So the principle here is that you cannot give your zakat to someone you're required to sustain or to spend on. So if you're required to spend on somebody, you cannot give your zakat to them. Now, there are very few cases where women are required to spend on people, and it varies on the different madhahib. But generally speaking, women are not required to spend on family members. Men are required to spend. So then you would not be able to give your zakat as a man to your ancestors or descendants, according to the Shafi'is. According to the Malikis, it would not be. It would be your parents and your children, particularly. According to the Hanafis and Hanbalis, they extended this a little bit to the Hawashi. Hawashi means the, relatives on the sides, not Amuda in Nasab, which is basically ancestors and descendants, not the line of lineage, but on the sides, such as, brother and sister and so on. So in the Hanbali method, for instance, the person who would inherit from someone would be required to spend on them. وعلى الوارث مثل ذلك, upon the one who inherits likewise, meaning the obligation to spend. So that's it. The straightforward example would be, can a woman give her zakat to her husband? Of course, a man cannot give his zakat to his wife. Would a woman be able to give her zakat to her husband? This is a little bit more complicated than giving your zakat to your family members, because in this particular case, she would be benefiting to some extent from this, from giving her zakat to her husband. And that's why Imam Abu Hanifa disapproves of it, does not agree that she can. But the majority, and there are two different reports in the Hanbali method, but the majority anyway said that she may give her zakat to her husband because of a hadith that's reported from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. His wife asked the Prophet ﷺ if she can give her zakat to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, that he claimed that he can receive her zakat or sadaqah, and the Prophet ﷺ approved of it. So anyway, this is one of the sort of the differences. But generally speaking, there are no differences in terms of, like if she has money, that it's the nisab for her is the same nisab for the man. The hawl for her, the passage of 1 year is the same for the man, and the rest of the rulings. Just the fact that she is not required to spend as many people as the man is, therefore more people will be deserving recipients as far as the woman is concerned.
Jazakallah khairan. Anam, I'll pass it to you for the next question if you want to.
So the next question is, when collecting zakat from family and friends for a cause, what are key things to keep in mind when doing so? Specifically, regarding are there specific obligations or the length of time after which the zakat has been collected? Is there a specific time that must be distributed?
As soon as it is logistically possible, like if you are a zakat collector, if you are the organization. Now the scholars have had basically some brainstorming on this, whether the organization is because it's a little bit different nowadays with these organizations. So is the organization an agent for the donor or an agent for the recipient, or are they double agents? So they are agents for both the donor and the recipient, and it makes a huge difference certainly if you take one or the other of these. So if the organization is the agent for the donor, let's say, for instance, the donor gave the organization the zakat before Salatul Eid, Eid al-Fitr, the one that's coming in a few days, inshallah. So then the organization gave it out to the poor on the following day, or 3 days later after Eid ended, and so on. Does that count? Now, if you say that they are the agents for the donor, no, it doesn't count. If you say they are the agent for the recipient, it would count. And certainly if they are double agents, then it would still count because it is, you need to give it to the basically the recipient or their agent before Salatul Eid or before the end of the Eid day, according to the different positions. So the organizations need to basically, to distribute the zakat as soon as logistically possible. But then, that does not mean that they will do things haphazardly and give it to people who are not deserving just because they want to spend it or they want to distribute it as soon as possible. They still need to do their due diligence to give it to the rightful recipients and to deserving people. So if that takes time, then it does take time. It's just, you have to do it the right way. And certainly, people have expanded on this, and they discussed whether they can, those organizations could actually invest the zakat money for the poor, and then give the poor on sort of a periodic basis. And that would not be advisable for organizations, particularly smaller organizations. It would require, and we have two large fiqh assemblies, the largest fiqh assemblies in the world. One of them is the International Islamic Fiqh Academy. It belongs to the OIC, or the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And the other one is the fiqh assembly that belongs to the Muslim World League. And they disagreed over this. And so some people said you can invest it for them, and some people said you cannot invest it for them, and you have to pass it on to them right away, as soon as logistically possible. But even if we say that you can invest, this would probably require a lot of, credibility and a lot of, so it would be like a zakat, sort of like a government-backed zakat entity that has a lot of credibility and a lot of authority to do stuff like this. So it's not advisable for smaller organizations to do this. What they can do is, pass the zakat on to their recipients as soon as logistically possible, which means, soon as they can give it to the really deserving recipients. Now, if you want to give your zakat, if some people have a concern that if you give their zakat all at once to people, they'll spend the rest of the year having nothing. And then if you want to give the zakat in installments, whether you are a person or an organization paying on behalf of a person, that person needs to give his zakat 1 year in advance. And in this case, you could give it in installments. So how do you give your zakat 1 year in advance? You estimate how much zakat will be due on you next year. And you could give like 70% of it, for instance, in advance over time. And then it would be given over time to the poor. And then at the end of the year, you figure out how much you have given in advance. And you figure out how much zakat is due on you. And if you've given more, then that would be sadaqah, and you should not be regretful. Some people said you could give it 2 years in advance, and in this case you could, but if you take the position that you can give only 1 year in advance, it will be counted as sadaqah for you, and you should not be regretful. And if you paid less, then you just need to pay off the rest.
Got it. Jazakallah khairan. Next question we have, is it necessary to pay zakat if one is living paycheck to paycheck? If I have enough in zakat liable assets, but don't have enough cash on hand, do I still owe zakat?
Yes, you do. And in this case, you basically, it depends on what you mean by you have zakatable assets, but you don't have cash. So let us say you have gold, but you don't have cash. Then you need to sell some of it. Let us say you have a retirement plan and you can't withdraw from it. Then you will pay later when you receive the money, when you're able to withdraw, because it's different from gold in this case. You have trade goods. You can actually give the very trade goods that you have as zakat if you don't have the cash, or you could give cash. Trade goods, you could either do this or that. If you have land, basically, it depends on whether you take the position of the majority that you have to pay zakat. Land that is meant for sale, it depends on whether you take the position of the majority, whether you have to pay the zakat every year, or you take the position of Imam Malik, who says that a person who waits for the markets to appreciate, he calls it a tajir al-muhtakir versus a tajir al-mudir. He does not basically, do the trading, like it's not like basically daily or weekly or monthly trading, but he buys an asset and keeps it there until the markets appreciate. Imam Malik says, if he waited 20 years, he will pay the zakat once only when he sells, and that may be like a good position to take for like widows who have properties, for instance. You need to have acquired the trade goods with the intention of selling it. Like if you had inherited the trade goods, that they will not be zakatable because you did not acquire them with the intention of selling them. But anyway, so sometimes you need to liquidate. Sometimes it would be hard to liquidate. In this case, it will be dayn fi dhimmatik. It will be due on you. You owe it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whenever you can pay it, you pay it. Yeah.
And I think this you addressed it partially in the question you just answered. The follow-up question was, can we give zakat in a form other than money or the form that it was due on? So, for example, if zakat is due on gold, can you give in a form of the gold jewelry itself? And I think I believe you answered that as yes, right?
So here's the issue. You know, when it comes to trade goods, you can certainly and then give the zakat in the form, in the form of the trade goods that are zakatable, or in the form of cash, and you do whatever is sort of better for the poor or the deserving recipients. But because cash and trade goods are somewhat exchangeable, but the concept itself, whether you could give the value of what is due on you in kind, in some other currency, in some other currency, yes, you can. But if you can give for instance, give the zakat al-mal in kind, give food to people, give zakat al-fitr in cash. So the opposite. So can people do things of that nature? So Imam Abu Hanifa said you can. The three other imams said you cannot. You give the zakat, like the zakat comes out from the same the zakatable sort of type of asset, not al-ayn al-jins, which means not the exact assets that you have, but the species. There's the same kind. So you cannot give, and it's, everybody knows this is like one of the famous controversies. You can't give zakat al-fitr in cash, according to the three imams. The three other imams. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah took a sort of a middle position between them, being Hanbali himself, but he said that if it is more advantageous to the poor to give the value, give the value. He said by default, he agreed with the three imams that the default should be no. But he said that if it is truly more advantageous to the poor, so it is not more advantageous to you, it's more advantageous to the poor, to give it, to give the value, whether it is food instead of cash or cash instead of food, the value, the same value and something else, then you do that, then it would be allowable. So, and that I actually adopted that middle position because it should not be basically be about you and what's convenient for you. It should be about what's best for the recipient.
And just to clarify for the listeners, this is not that we give zakat al-fitr in money, but them receiving it. Because we can give it to an organization in form of money, but they would convert it into, the five categories. Is that accurate?
You're still given it. You're still given it in food because we said the organization here would be your agent. So
okay.
Your agent is just taking your place, exactly your place. Everything the agent does, you're doing it. They are just an agent for you. They're like your right hand.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay.
The next section of questions we have is on zakat recipients. So the first question is, if family is considered in need, can we give them our zakat even if they are direct family? And if debt is the reason for them being in need, does that change anything?
Okay, so people that you're required to spend on, you cannot give them from your zakat. Who are the people that you're required to spend on? Maybe I did say this in the beginning. So between the Malikis, who have basically limited this to parents and children, and the Hanafis and Hanbalis, who extended this beyond your line of lineage to people that you inherit from, for the Hanbalis, and then the Hanafis have like their own basically rules when it comes to those who are the deserving recipients. And then the Shafi'is in the middle, they did not limit it to parents and children, but they extended it to basically ancestors and descendants all the way. Those people, honestly speaking, personally, I like the Maliki position nowadays because it is very hard nowadays to require a person to spend on his ashira. It's not, it is hard. It is truly hard. So if you just require them to spend on their parents and children, that's good enough. And then if they have a needy brother, a needy sister, and give them from their zakat, yes, that would not be acceptable by the Hanafis and the Hanbalis if they inherit from them. But otherwise it would be acceptable by the Malikis and Shafi'is. And I think that this is kinder, and there is nothing in the Quran and Sunnah that would basically prevent us from doing that.
And it's a similar question to the one that Ibad asked, was can paying a debt that is on a payment plan on behalf of someone else be considered as zakat? For example, a sibling student loan. Can we pay that to be a form of zakat?
Okay, so here is the issue. You need to make sure that there is one condition for the zakat to be acceptable, which is tamlik, transfer of ownership. You need to transfer the ownership of the money to the recipient. But there hopefully should be a way to ensure that it goes to that, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, such as, like if someone wanted to, so comes and says to you, I need to pay rent, and you want to really make sure that they take the money and pay their rent, that there hopefully is a way to ensure that the money goes for that purpose.
The next question is about the priority of giving zakat. Who should the priority of the people we should give zakat to be in terms of poor, needy, family, etc.?
Of course, the family would be a priority to give zakat to if they are deserving. Notwithstanding the disagreement that we talked about earlier between the different madhahib regarding who would be deserving of your family, but if there is like a kinship, then they would be deserving, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it would be sadaqah wa sila. It would count not only as sadaqah, but it will also count as sila, silat al-rahim, joining the kin. So you want, there are different ways to prioritize things. Certainly the needier would be prioritized, or the more needy would be prioritized. Family would be prioritized. People who need things urgently would be prioritized. Like for instance, nowadays I would prioritize Gaza because they are, under assault from, a ruthless enemy. So there are different ways of prioritizing, but certainly people who are more needy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started by saying al-fuqara, إنما صدقات للفقراء والمساكين. The Prophet ﷺ, when he sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to al-Yaman, he said to him, فَعَلِمْهُمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ افترض عَلَيْهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ فَتُرَدُّ عَلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ. Let them know that Allah had basically prescribed for them a zakat or alms or sadaqah that will be taken from the rich among them and given back to the poor among them, and he did not mention the 8 categories. So the fuqara in particular are the most deserving of the 8 categories. Those are the people who are really poor. Masakin, and certainly the scholars disagree over the difference between fuqara and masakin, but likely fuqara are more needy than the masakin. The really, really poor people are the fuqara. Masakin, they do have an income, but it does not get them to the end of the month. It is not really sufficient for them. Yeah.
Last question wraps up the Zakat recipients part, but it's a loaded question. We know that the family of the Prophet is excluded from receiving Zakat. If one's family considers themselves to be as part of the family of the Prophet or in desperate need of help, they're in the category of fuqara and masakin, can we give them Zakat?
Yeah, if they are in desperate need and you can't give them something else, then yes. If they are in desperate need, Islam is a realistic religion. There is no rigidity. The legal framework in Islam has a great deal of flexibility. And there are contingencies and there are concessions when things, the rule is, the principle is المشقة تجلب التيسير. كلما ضاق الأمر اتسع. مشقة تجلب التيسير means that hardship begets ease. Hardship begets ease means that the fuqaha will basically provide ease when things become hard. Improvise, make concessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next section, just a couple of questions on debts and loans. So the question is, should one give Zakat if they have debts, or should priority be given to paying off the debt? If we have interest-bearing student loans, should we prioritize paying off the student loans, even if they are on a monthly payment plan?
So should they give Zakat or prioritize the debt? They would not be liable for Zakat if they have a debt that basically consumes their zakatable assets. Because part of the way to calculate their Zakat is to figure out the zakatable assets and subtract the entire debt from your zakatable assets. Whatever is left will be zakatable. Of course, there are certain things like investment debts, like a debt that you accrue to buy a property, to buy machines for your factory. And these investment debts have a different way of calculating them. You only subtract the annual payment. You don't subtract the entire debt. Otherwise, everybody who has a mortgage will not be paying Zakat. But you subtract the annual installment. But when it comes to other debts, such as student loans, you subtract the entire amount from your zakatable assets. If you have anything left, you pay the zakat on that.
Even if the student loan is on a payment plan, for example, a federal student repayment plan of 10 years.
Yes, even it is a loan. You have incurred the entire amount, and then even if they give you a plan, it's still a loan, and you still subtract the entire amount of the loan. So keep paying the loan until you finish paying the loan. You don't pay zakat when you have a loan that basically exceeds your zakatable assets. This is different from the mortgage. How is it different? Because you have the house, you have the factory. Let us say you borrowed $20 million to buy a factory, okay, or to buy machines for your factory. Will you subtract that? No. But let us say you lost the factory to a fire, or you lost that machine to whatever, broke down. Will you subtract the $20 million? Yes, you will subtract the $20 million because in this case, the asset that you spent the loan on is not there anymore.
Okay. And that would extend to car loans as well.
Car loans, any loans.
Okay.
Jazakallah.
The next question is,
And hopefully we're getting halal loans. Yeah, just throw this in there.
but that is the disclaimer. Yes, all loans should be halal loans. Okay. The next, I think you answered it. The question was, what type of debts can be considered as zakatable? And I think you've answered that between car loans, student loans, and home loans. We'll move on to the next section, which is retirement funds. When you retire, is zakat due on the full value of the retirement fund or just the amount that you withdraw?
No, zakat is due on the entire amount of the retirement fund, but how do you calculate this? Even before you retire, there's zakat still due. It's controversial, but you know, I will take you through a calculation that or a formula I gave to people, and it was, misunderstood by many people. I said before to people that you will pay 0.5% on the total retirement plan, 0.5%. I explained that to people, and people thought that this is, like a new ruling or an ijtihad of mine, like a contemporary ijtihad or something. It's not. It's not that complicated. So you have $100 in your retirement plan, your 401k. You have $100. If you want to withdraw this, how much will you withdraw? Because one of the conditions of the zakatability of money or assets is complete ownership and the ability to possess it, the ability to possess the money. So if you want to withdraw the money, keep in mind, I don't want to forget this because people may take this and run away. Ability to possess, but if you voluntarily contributed to a long-term investment and you can't withdraw, it's still zakatable because you gave up that ability to possess the money. So if you put your money in a long-term investment for 5 years, you can't withdraw within the 5 years, still zakatable because you voluntarily did it. Okay, so the retirement plan. Retirement plans where you don't voluntarily contribute and you cannot withdraw will not be zakatable. 2 conditions. You cannot withdraw, you did not contribute voluntarily, not zakatable. Retirement plan that basically lacks one of the 2 conditions. You either can withdraw or you contributed voluntarily to the retirement plan. Then they will be zakatable. How do you give the zakat? £100, $100. So $100, you go you try to withdraw. How much can you withdraw? 60. Because there is, deferred taxes and penalties. So people know that you likely would be able to withdraw 60%, $60. So you're paying zakat only on $60. But does your retirement plan have $60 or does it have their value in stocks? Their value in stocks. So should it be zakat on currency or zakat on stocks in this case? It's zakat on stocks. So what is the zakat on stocks? Then, the International Islamic Fiqh Academy that belongs to the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, they had discussed this over 2 years, and they had many, many ideas. Some of them said pay 2.5% on the total value. Some of them said, which will be basically crippling for many people because the amount of profit that you make is 4 to 4.5% per year. So if you pay 2.5%, that's more than half of what you're making, and that's not usual for zakat. Zakat is not meant to harm the muzakki. So some other people said pay 10% of the profit. They treated this like crops. Crops that are easy to maintain. So they said 10% of the profit. And they basically, most of them eventually agreed on making an educated guesstimate, I guess, of the zakatable assets in the company that you have stocks in, or the companies. Now we're not talking about day traders. Day traders are paying 2.5% on the total. We're talking about long-term investors who put their money there in the stocks for long term. So for long-term investors, they said you estimate how much, because you are a partner in the company. You own this much of the company. So you figure how much would the company be, how much, the percentage of the zakatable assets in the company that the company would need to pay zakat on. And based on that, you pay the zakat. So if it is Macy's, most of their stuff is trade goods, merchandise, zakatable. If it is AT&T, most of their assets are ships and towers and stuff like this, not zakatable. So it would be very low for AT&T, very high for Macy's. So what about people who can't figure this out, can't read the annual report, or they have like their money is in mutual funds, so spread over like tens of companies. What can they do? So people who have expertise in the stock market have advised that about 1/3 of the stock market is 1/3 of the value of the companies in the stock market is zakatable. How did they figure this out? I don't know. I'm not really that good at commerce and money and stuff like that. But we asked, they told us. So we took that and we said, okay, the $60 that you were able to withdraw now came down to 20. 2.5%, on 20%, or is 0.5% on the total. 2.5% on 20% is 0.5% on the total. So that's how we came down to this 0.5%. Now, if stock's not in a retirement plan, will you do the same? No, because you will pay on the third, not 20%. You'll pay on 1/3 because there are no deferred taxes and penalties and stuff. What else? When you have to pay this every year, you'll have to pay this every year. Now, if someone says, but I really don't have the cash to do this, then we will say, then you owe it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whenever you start to receive, the proceeds of that plan, then you pay it then, or you pay it when you can. You just pay it when you can. After you retire, there are no deferred taxes or penalties. So it will be, I guess, money in stocks. So you will pay on the 1/3.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So.
Yeah.
So the next section, a couple questions on investing. So the first question is, if you purchase an asset with the intention for business use, is it considered traded goods? And do you pay zakat on the rental income of the asset value itself? So for example, if you purchase a car for the purposes of putting it on Turo to rent it out and you get rental income from that, or other things that you purchase for other people to use where you're going to get rental income, which part of that is zakat?
Zakat on merchandise, zakat on trade goods. There are conditions for something to be zakatable, for trade goods or merchandise to be zakatable. One condition is that it is meant for sale, not for business, meant for sale. The other condition is that you will have to have that intention at the time of purchase. You have to have acquired it with that intention. And if it comes to you through something other than that, like a gift or inheritance or something like that, not acquisition, then it is not zakatable. And when does it become zakatable? It becomes zakatable according to the Hanbalis. There are two different positions. According to the Hanbalis, earlier Hanbalis said it becomes zakatable when you change your intention. The latter Hanbalis said even if you change your intention, it does not become zakatable. It does not become zakatable because the change of intention itself is not strong enough to change it from the default, which is being usable, to being trade goods or merchandise, except in one case, gold and silver, jewelry, because they are by default, certainly in the Hanafi madhab, they are zakatable regardless. But according to the majority, they are not zakatable if they are for use. But since they are by default zakatable, and their status changed because they're being used, simply changing your intention would be strong enough to make them zakatable. But other trade goods, other merchandise, other things that you bought for any reason, land that you bought, for instance, you purchased this land to build a house, but then you decided that you will not build it, and you will sell the land. That change of intention does not make it zakatable. So in the Hanafi madhab, it's niyat al-tijara and amal al-tijara. You combine the intention with some action indicative of your sort of resolve to sell this. So you put it in the shop. You should put it in the window to sell it. Then in the Hanafi madhab, that makes it zakatable because it's not simply an intention, but you actually did something to indicate that it is for sale. So anyway, people who purchase stuff for business, not for sale, for business, not for sale, these items are not zakatable, even if they are for business. You purchase like a residential complex, for instance, or like an apartment or a car to rent it out, not zakatable. You will pay zakat on the proceeds.
Got it. Jazakallah khairan. Next question is, how do you calculate zakat on a privately held company and its zakat liable assets? Because the company valuation may be very uncertain or unstable. And maybe you've already answered this with the context on 33% where it's not possible, or if there's anything further you want to add.
Yeah, and you guys told me, right? You guys told me that there is an application now called Zoya.
Yeah, but
I have not tested this application myself, but you said that that companies in the stock market, you could enter the company and Zoya will tell you.
Yes, but this question is about those are for the publicly traded companies. You can look those up on Zoya. If it's a private company where you don't have access to like their annual reports and you don't know exactly how much of their assets are zakat liable, but you've invested in it. Maybe it's like a startup of a friend and you've put money into that.
You want to ask your friend.
Sorry?
You want to ask your friend. You want to talk to your friend. Ask the people. Ask the CFO. You want to do your due diligence.
If for whatever reason it's not possible.
But you will at least know the activities of the company to make an educated guess, I guess.
Okay. Okay, the next, we have a couple more questions left. I know we're a little bit over time. Sheikh, is it okay to continue? We have 3 more questions.
Okay, we can try to
quickly. Okay, we'll go quick. Okay, so real estate. So if you've invested in a plot of land that's underdeveloped or not developed, doesn't have infrastructure on it, and you have the intention when you invested in it to sell it long term, do you pay zakat annually on it? And if so, what amount? Because between zakat and property taxes, you end up paying about 5% of the value of the land annually. And typically such properties don't really appreciate at 5% annually until there is development in the vicinity.
You purchase the land to sell it?
You purchase the land to sell it long term. So right now it's underdeveloped, doesn't really have any infrastructure on it. And
okay, so we will go back to the same thing that I said I answered this in the beginning, so somewhere, where I said that the majority, that's Hanafi, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis, said you have to pay the zakat every year if you purchased it with the intention of selling it. It's trade goods for in this case. And the Malikis said that there is a difference between someone who buys and sells and someone who awaits appreciation in the market. And so the person who buys something and awaits appreciation in the market, that person, they call him a tajir al-muhtakir. And for that type of investment, they say that he pays the zakat once upon sale. You know, when he sells the property, he pays the zakat once. And I said that I find this position to be a good position, because like sometimes you would, like if you have like a widow, for instance, and she has money and she's afraid of giving that money to people, to basically squander it. And she purchases a property just to keep her money there so that it may appreciate for her kids in the future, to sell it in the, and then we say 2.5% every year. In 20 years, by the time her kids grow and they need the money, she would have paid half the value of the land in zakat. Anyway. So I think the Maliki madhab does have, so like a
good
practical sort of
application.
Mm-hmm.
Two more questions on the topic of missed zakat. So question is, I gave my zakat to an organization without specifying it as zakat. Do I need to repay it? I guess the questioner means if they're not able to reach out in time to let whoever they've given the zakat to that it is zakat.
Well, this organization collects money for what? For the poor and the needy?
Yeah, it could be multiple purposes.
Like a masjid.
Huh?
Like it may be like a masjid, as an example, or like an organization, like a relief organization that gives to those in need. They collect zakat or sadaqah.
Relief organizations, their recipients are almost always zakat eligible.
Usually they have you specify when you give to those organizations whether you want it to be zakat or not. Even if you give to a masjid, same thing, like they'll have you specify if this is intended for zakat or not. So I guess the questioner is probably wondering if they forgot to specify that and later on realized that they didn't do that. And for whatever reason, I guess ideally they should contact the person.
They can contact, but if not, they had given their zakat to an organization that gives that passes out zakat to people, not an organization that is not zakat eligible, an organization with activities that are not zakat eligible. So hopefully they should be fine. Hopefully they should be fine.
Inshallah. Last question. Do I need to pay zakat for all the years I missed zakat liable assets and are now overdue, perhaps due to ignorance or not knowing?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what you owe to Allah. Like you have to figure out. You have to go back and just figure out how much you missed.
Got it. I think that's all the questions. Jazakallah khairan. Anam, you're back with us. Unfortunately, lost power a little bit. But Anam, anything else that we missed? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khairan, for the time. May Allah bless you. And again, congratulations on Adi. May Allah bless you and your family.
آمين الله يبارك فيك جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum.
السلام.
Okay, so beyond the questions that we had that we went through with Dr. Hatem, we had some other questions that were asked by the group. So inshallah, we're going to address those. Those are either related to content that we already covered in the videos and through the class with Abu Zaid, or they're about the Zakat Calculator. So I'm actually going to hand it to Anam, and he's going to go through those, inshallah.
So the first question is, do RSU grants from your employer get calculated the same way as passive traded stocks? This was one of the questions we answered during the video that we published. RSU grants, the part that's vested, will be treated the same way as passively traded stocks. The unvested portion of the RSUs will not be zakat liable. The next question is, if a company gives you a portion of your compensation in stock or stock options, do you pay zakat on the total or the amount that you have vested, which is similar to the question before regarding restricted stock units? You only pay it on the vested portion of the stocks. The next question is regarding to when to give zakat. Is it year to year according to the Islamic calendar, or can I give it during Ramadan to Ramadan? So it's year to year based off of the Islamic calendar. You can choose a date if you don't know when you had reached Nisab. You can choose one date that you want to anchor to, and then use that as the zakat, the due date. But it's based off of the Islamic calendar. Some people choose Ramadan as the due date. Some people choose right after Ramadan, the first of Shawwal as the due date. So you can choose if you do not know when you reach Nisab. The next question is the right way to do Zakat al-Fitr. We covered this in the video as well. Zakat al-Fitr is one of the types of zakat. The amount of the Zakat al-Fitr needs to be in people's hands by Salatul Eid. Right, that's the majority of the opinion, that by Salatul Eid it needs to be in their hand. Okay. Now, the next set of questions are regarding Zakat Calculator. How do I calculate the total dollar amount of my gold? I only know 2.5% of my gold value. This is another one of those things that we addressed in the videos that we've published. One of the things just to keep in mind, that gold value is not based off of the purchase value that you had. It's based off of today's gold rate. So today, I believe it's around $73 per gram for 24 karat gold. We have actually produced a Zakat gold calculator in the Zakat Calculator itself. One of the tabs is a gold calculator, and the video demonstrates how to go through each one of them. The next question is similar, 2.5% of my gold value. How do I calculate? How do I enter calculating zakat in the calculator? In the main tab of the Sabeel Zakat Calculator, there's a under currency with the type of gold and silver. You can put the amount there, and it will calculate 2.5% off of that. The next question is, what is the meaning of tax bracket? Is it based on the value of your asset or the combination of savings and asset upon withdrawal? So tax bracket is basically what your income tax bracket is, right? So typically this demographic would be within the 22 to 24% federal income tax bracket, and in New Jersey it's about 6%. So that comes out to about 28 to 30%. You would default to what your tax bracket is right now to determine what it would be upon if you were to cash out. It won't be, for example, if you have $500,000 in your 401k, you wouldn't use the $500,000 tax bracket as the calculation. You would just do what you've been using as of today as the tax bracket value. The next question is zakats for investment accounts, stock market. I'm guessing that is related to I'm guessing that is related to the passively traded stocks, and we've covered that in the video as well in the workshop. So inshallah, if you look at the video itself, I think I think if you look at the video itself, you'll be able to review the content regarding that. And the last question is, are you responsible for zakats for an investment account that are meant for you but are not managed by you? The short answer is yes. If you are basically an adult, you're baligh, you are responsible for the zakat that you own, even if it's not managed by you. If you are taking responsibility for someone on behalf of someone else who is a child and they have an account or retirement portfolio or some type of asset, you are required to pay zakat as the guardian for that person until they become the right age, they become mature or at the age of puberty. And so those are the 10 questions that we had that you had asked, and inshallah, alongside with the questions that Sh Hatem was asked, this should wrap up all the questions from this past Saturday. Jazakallah khair.